Make a move extreme. Shortcut to your dreams. A blow straight to the stars on that flying thing. Get high. Get the snow blanking. Pick a tune, chick a boon in the world beyond. Got a beat, got a heat on the phone. It's straight over the park. Once the magic starts. Do you really wanna taste it? What's going on must come down. Baby, you're losing ground. Just let me come the mirror, realize the whole is wrong. She tells you where your blinkers on. For your dog, the invisible bone. Do you really wanna taste it? What's going on must come down. Do you really wanna taste it? Baby, you're losing ground. Just let me come the mirror, realize the whole is wrong. She tells you where your blinkers on. For your dog, the invisible bone.
Hey, what's good, everybody? It's me, your hero, Benjamin Banks, and you're watching Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks, and you're watching a brand new episode of Who's That Cosplayer, celebrating Black History Month here on the channel. And joining me on today's episode is cosplayer Mootyvision. How you doing today, Moody? Or should I say it?
How you doing, Benji? Meet Pennywise. Pennywise, the muscular clown.
Hey, Pennywise flexing. Pennywise got the peaks on top of peaks, and this is going to be a really fun episode. So I'm ready to get into it. Before we get into the interview, though, everybody that's watching, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to the channel, and you hit that bell button so that way you're always notified when we have new content here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And as D always says, podcast link down in the description. Like, follow, subscribe. So let's go ahead and get into this interview. So Pennywise, first question that I want to ask you is, how did you get into cosplaying? What's your origin story? Everybody has one. Every hero or villain, they have an origin story. So tell me yours.
Well, let Moody tell you.
Oh,
The teeth have to come out because when they're in, it just triggers me to talk like Pennywise. And it's my voice is nowhere near a Pennywise voice, but for whatever reason, when I put on the makeup and the teeth go in, the voice comes and it pops up. And so I just started repeating lines from the movie. But my cosplay journey really, for actual costumes, started when I had children. And when they were getting to the age where they wanted to go out for Halloween, but they couldn't find any of the costumes that fit what they enjoyed, because what they enjoyed is what I enjoyed at that time. And back 20, 30 years ago, you didn't see a lot of superhero costumes, or if they were the plastic ones with the cheap plastic masks and things of that nature. You definitely didn't see any anime costumes. And so I just, when they said, I want this, or I want that, and I was always an artist, drawing growing up, and then I started going into trying to make things in 3D. So maybe make Wolverine claws or something like that. So when they said, I want this costume, or I want that costume, but they don't have it, I said, don't worry, I think I can make it. So then I started making the kids their costumes at Halloween. And then I went ahead and I joined in. But it was when my son, he got to, I guess it was a 10th or 11th grade, Grand Rapids finally had their first Comic-Con come in the area. And when that Comic-Con came in, my son's like, hey, Dad, the Comic-Con's coming. Can I have a costume? I want you to make me a costume for the con. I'm like, all right, you can go to the con. When is it? Tomorrow. So I had to make him a costume overnight. And I got him something overnight, and he was happy with it. It was something from Black Butler. So I basically took one of my suits and I pinned it up to make sure it fit him. And then I did some pentagrams on his hand and some other things just to make it work for the day. But after that, and I knew that con was going to be there every year, he and I started making costumes together. Basically, the next year, I just made one for him. But I remembered that the people who had the most fun at the con were the ones dressed up. So the night before my second con, I decided I'm going to put together something for myself. And so my very first official con costume, and not just for Halloween, was your classic Bane from the comics, with the tubes and everything else, the big burly Bane and stuff like that. But after that, every year I just wanted to go a little bit bigger. And once I started going to more and more cons, my son found a way to get into San Diego Comic-Con. So we hopped on and we got in there, and we were lucky enough to go 3 years in a row. And each year I'm like, well, I got to go bigger than I did last year. I got to go bigger than I did the last year. And the first year I was the Juggernaut, a human-sized Juggernaut, and not the full size. That was my big costume with Mankind as a backup and some other things like that. And I did that the next year as Maui, and I did some other costumes, but Maui was my big one. And I thought I could never get as big of a reaction as I did in Maui, because all the little kids just loved it. The movie had just come out. I was a bigger guy, and the tattoos and everything, I pretty well looked like Maui, or at least a life version of him. And then that next year, that third and final year, we made a huge family trip. So my daughter and her husband-to-be went, my son and his wife went, and my wife and we went. So all 6 of us went. We all did different costumes and stuff. And that's when I put together the Gladiator Hulk and walked in there at 8'2", walking around the con, and people just lost it at that point. Security told us that we couldn't keep creating crowds, and I said, hey, what am I going to do about it? Yeah. And so then the security actually assigned 2 or 3 security guards to walk with me everywhere I walked. So I felt like the actual stars at the con. We got to walk to different places with security so they weren't bothered. And so that was pretty cool. So that was my journey through there, starting helping my kids for Halloween all the way through in my own costumes, and then even getting my wife to join in. So
yeah, so it's a whole family project in a way. And you want to know something interesting? I love your origin story, because a lot of cosplayers who I interview up here, it's like they always say that Halloween was like their gateway into getting into cosplay. But for you, it was your son who wanted to, go to a con, and you did the costume for him. And then you were like, okay, now I got to participate in this. I got to step my game up. And like just seeing all of the cosplays that you've done, because, I met you last year at Greenville Comic-Con. And,
okay.
And just seeing like, the costumes that you've been posting, like they're awesome. But when I had to put the slideshow together for this interview, I was just like, oh snap, Moody did Juggernaut, he did the Hulk, and those cosplays were awesome. So especially your Gladiator Hulk. So it's like, I can understand why when you're at these cons, you're drawing a huge crowd, because it's like, it was a badass cosplay. You know what I'm saying? So pinky's up to you for creating that. And now I want to ask you, like with your Juggernaut and with your Gladiator Hulk, because I saw some of the photos on your page with the process that went into doing that stuff. But like, how long does it usually take to do that?
The weird thing is I've got my mind is always working ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And so I pretty well have just about every single costume pre-built in my head.
Nice.
And I'll walk into the store, I'll walk into the hobby store, or into like Lowe's, the hardware store, and I'll just buy up a bunch of stuff. And it looks like it's just a mess of things. And then I'll come home and I'll just lay it on our kitchen table. Luckily, we've got like a 10-person kitchen table, so it's about 8 feet long. Yeah. And my wife just looks at it and she just shakes her head and she walks away. She's if it wasn't for the first time where she saw my process, but she just sees the floor mats and all kinds of different things, and I'm pulling out heat guns and things, and knives and cutting boards and sewing machines, even though I can't sew for nothing. That's one skill that I really need to work on. But she just sees me just clutter the table and she walks away. And the reason she walks away is because not only does she know it's going to become something amazing, that's what she's told me, not me speaking for myself, but also she knows it's not going to be there long. Yeah. Other than the Gladiator Hulk, every single and Deathstroke, other than the Gladiator, Hulk, and Deathstroke, every single one of my costumes was complete in 2 weeks or less.
Wow, that's amazing, because it's like I hear stories where, you know, some people it takes them a month, sometimes 2 months. So for you to, you know, already have it in your mind, like, this is what I want to create, this is what I want to work on, and to have it done in 2 weeks, like, that's awesome, man.
And I pretty well have it pre-built. I don't use purchased or printed out patterns. I draw everything handmade, and then try to work from that. And then if it doesn't work, then I sit there and I trim it down to make it work. But I just eyeball everything that I do. The Deathstroke took me a month to do. And then you can add in an extra 3 days for his sword. The Gladiator Hulk took me 6 months to do, but Stain was done in less than 2 weeks. Hela was done in 2 weeks. Same with the Gladiator, or not the Gladiator Hulk, but Juggernaut. He was done in about 2 weeks. I did the entire Ginyu Force, all of those costumes I made.
Saw that too.
The first one was like a week or two, and then I just had to keep making the same thing over and over again for the rest of the crew. So yeah, the helmets, each one of the helmets that they're wearing, it took me maybe about a week just to kind of figure out what I was doing. That was really one of my earliest in depth with foam was that, and then I built on from there. But Deathstroke, I was long story short, it was just before the pandemic hit, and I actually had a stroke, and I was in the hospital for that stroke. And a friend sends me a text, but I was already thinking it. He's like, "You just had a stroke. Maybe you should be making Deathstroke as your." I was like,
I'm sitting here feeling bad.
That's kind of insensitive, but I was already laughing because that was the first thing going through my mind, because I hadn't had any of the residual effects from the stroke. It was just in that moment, and then it was just them trying to figure out what was going on. But I haven't had any kind of problem since then, as far as I know. My wife says there's some weird things about me ever since, but but as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing just fine. So, I jumped into that project while I was recuperating around here, and so that's probably why I was able to knock it out in a month, because I didn't actually have to go to work. But Gladiator Hulk, I would get home from work, and then I'd start working on it. I'd work on it till 2 a.m. Then I'd sleep for 4 or 5 hours and go to work. And then when the weekend hit, I would work all the way through the weekend. But that was me trying to learn a lot of skills at once, and I was scared that it was going to be overwhelming for me. But then I had seen a few people online actually do a Gladiator Hulk cosplay. For the one that I really loved was, there's this female, and unfortunately I don't remember her name. It's been years since I talked to her, but she made all the armor pieces to fit her body type, not anything overwhelming. But there was something about the curves and the spikes that I just didn't think I was going to be able to get. So I sent her a message through Instagram, and I said, "Hey, are you able to help me? I'm not understanding how this is done." And this was the first time that I had reached out to someone on Instagram to try to get help. So her response amazed me and made me really get connected to this community, and also wanting to help others if they decide to do something similar to what I did, because her response to me wasn't a message, wasn't even an audio recording of her voice. She sent me 6 video recordings, 30 seconds long each, explaining her process and doing everything, and just sent it straight to me. And that was amazing to me, that somebody doesn't even know me. I just asked the question, how did she do something? And she took the time right then and there pretty well, because I got it within an hour or so after sending my message to her. She took the time to explain to me her process. And that helped me get through that costume so I didn't feel overwhelming. But it also drew me closer to the community, realizing that these people aren't all about themselves. They're all about trying to expand and make this enjoyable for everyone. So,
and I really love that. And I want to piggyback off of that, because my co-host on the Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks podcast, Rebellious D, he did his first cosplay at NecoCon last year, and he was the Plague Doctor from this comic book / movie called Major Grom. And this was his first time, like, putting the pieces together and using foam and all that stuff. And he had found somebody on YouTube who had made a costume, but they only spoke Russian. They didn't speak English at all. And he reached out to them and they said that I'll help you, but I'll only be able to help you if you know somebody that speaks Russian. So for you to say that, you reached out to somebody and they helped you, and like that showed you that, okay, like this community, it is supportive, and they do want to help people out when they ask to get help, because she didn't have to do that, and because she
right, exactly.
And you know what, and I see that we have two visitors on screen, so Moody, go ahead and give them a shout out real quick.
Well, this one here, the one that's been barking in the background, is Domino. And this little one here, he's Hachi. He goes everywhere with me.
What up, Hachi?
He's a little 2-pound teacup Yorkie. But
Nice.
He's always underneath my feet, and then just to make sure he didn't get stepped on when Domino pushed in here and opened the door, I let him in here so that he wouldn't keep barking out there.
Hey, that's cool. Hey, I've had guests up here before, and they've had their animals make cameos on the episode. So the more, the merrier. So one thing I want to bring up next is, because of all of the amazing costumes that you've done over the years, I want to ask you, which one is your favorite?
My favorite has been Pennywise, just because I love getting into character. But overall, if it wasn't for the process, Gladiator Hulk down, hands down. Nice. Because I not only could I get into character, I was growling at everybody and I was moving around. The reaction from anybody who saw that, it was just amazing to be able to be that. Pennywise works the same but opposite way, where everybody loves the Hulk and want to get close. Everybody freaks out from Pennywise and runs away. So, but it's all fun. I worked at a haunted house for 5 seasons straight. Nice. And that's where my son and I started bonding more in costumes before that con came in. But we love to create new characters and kind of get absorbed with the character and just change the voices and figure out what's the best way to creep around the screen or with other people, just to get the reaction, that emotional attachment that we're looking for there. So whether it's giving them chills and watching them drop to the floor and crawl away from you, or whether it's having them run up and grab your hand because they want to get closer to you. So Gladiator Hulk was the best, but Pennywise is a real close second because I love the reaction that I get when I walk into a place like this.
Yeah, especially because a lot of people have a fear of clowns already. So when they see
that fear of clowns already has gotten me into trouble a couple times. And my wife told me this, because I made this because every time I go to the gym, I like to go in a certain outfit. And I did a lot of masks during the pandemic. And so I'd wear these masks, but I always wanted to go in there with my Pennywise mask. And I do that occasionally. I'll wear this Pennywise mask when I go into the gym. That's but awesome. I just wanted a whole outfit that went along with it. So that's why when I decided to put together a workout outfit like what I'm wearing now, as opposed to the standard Pennywise costume, and go work out. And my wife woke up and realized I was gone, and that so was the Pennywise stuff. And she sent me a message saying, "You need to get out of the gym right now. People have fear of clowns. You cannot be there working out dressed as a clown." So
have you ever scared anybody at the gym dressed as Pennywise?
No, because whenever I put on Pennywise, I go out of my way to try to be there early, really early. Like between 4 and 5 is when I show up, and so I'm walking out of there by 7. So that's what I've done the 2 times that I went out as Pennywise there. However, that was funny because shortly after making this, a carnival came into the area just before the pandemic, and the carnival was going on. I'm like, I got to go to the carnival. Let's get suited up and take some pictures. So I started wandering around the carnival on the outside because I didn't really want to pay to get in. But then the people saw me and they're like, "Come on in." And they let me in. So I'm walking around, going inside their little mirror, hall of mirrors and stuff, walking around as Pennywise, and people were taking pictures. It was all fun. Everybody loved it. except for a few employees, but that was why they let me in. They wanted me to scare those employees they knew had fear.
Yeah, I would have been freaking out, man. You know, one of my favorite cosplays that you've done recently is your Peacemaker costume.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because as soon as I watched the Peacemaker TV show, I had tagged Moody on Facebook, and I was just like, yo, if Mootyvision does not do the Peacemaker intro, I am going to be highly disappointed. And he actually did the Peacemaker intro. And Moody, if you don't mind, I'm going to post it at the start of this interview so that way people can see
please
it.
do. Please share it. If I go through that much trouble to make a fool of myself, I want people to see it.
Who's that cosplayer?
Steel City Scarecrow.
Well, this is what I want to ask you now. Like, how long did it take you to do that intro? Because it looks simple, but I'm sure that it's like, you know, just remembering like all of the moves and different takes and all that stuff. Like, how long did it take you to get everything down pat?
Well, like you said that, and I said I was actually working on it. So that first weekend when you posted that, I had already seen it, and I was sitting here trying to learn the movements that he does. And I'm not a great dancer, but these dance moves are not for dancers, and so it really threw me off because I have a rhythm and that was not even near a rhythm that I was used to. But so I had learned the entire choreography from the beginning to the end for John Cena, but I didn't think about all those other characters in the middle. So every time I ran through it, it just wasn't working. And then I said, well, I'm just going to do it. And I also couldn't slow it up and then match it up to the music. So I just pretty well had to go with the video playing behind the camera so I could, and that was the worst part because I was trying to avoid doing the reverse of the images and stuff. So I had to learn it in my head first. But I went over it, probably started doing the video and just left the camera rolling. Anytime I messed up, and I just rewind and keep doing it over and over again. And then once I thought I got enough good shots of one angle of it, then I would move the camera and I would go through the entire dance again. And if I mess up on something and it's something I knew I needed to do, then I'd keep rewinding and just doing that little clip of it. And just, it was just a pile of probably 2 hours worth of video of me doing that. And then as soon as it was done, I'm like, well, I need to get this posted. So I ended up sitting there because I did all this on my cell phone. I've got a program that I edit on the phone and do all of the details and everything else. I didn't have it all cut together and matched up with the music until about 2 a.m. And then that's when I hit save. And then I decided I'll post it in the morning kind of thing. But I started that process, including building that arch and everything else in the house, that my wife was like, what the heck are you doing now? I started about 3 or 4 p.m. putting that together in the house. And I said, I'm about to do this video. And so she's like, oh, I'm going to bed. and the dogs are walking through the videos too. So I had to keep doing it and making sure they weren't in the videos or anything like that. But yeah, from about 3 p.m., just building the set to 2 a.m. of hitting the final save on that record. So, but it was fun to do it, and I wish I could have did certain things over. I wish I actually had a camera person to move with me as opposed to just reposing things. But my wife is willing to take a few still shots. She's not doing video for me. So those are things that I gotta work out, whether I get some sort of camera that moves on its own and just kind of tracks my movement or whatever. But this hobby's starting to get expensive when I get to that point.
No, I feel you on that, man. And I hope that the next time I come down to North Carolina, that I can participate if you are cosplaying as Peacemaker, and I can be one of your backup dancers, because I love that. I love that intro, and it's like anime. It's one of those things you don't skip the Peacemaker.
Yeah, you do not skip the intro.
You do not skip it. You watch it. It's like, I don't know what it is about it, but it's like every time I watch it, it's like I'm just focused on a different person. And it's an amazing show. I highly recommend it. Mootyvision, they highly recommend it as well. Check it out.
Yeah, I love that show. I love the movie he came from, the
Mhm.
Suicide Squad. Check it out as well. But yeah, I'm not a huge I was not a huge John Cena fan, even though I'm a huge wrestling fan. But he's grown on me in everything he's done outside of wrestling.
Yeah,
So I
same.
appreciate what he does in wrestling. So
Same. So now this is where I wanted to take it at next. I wanted to move away from the cosplay talk and, talk a little bit about wrestling, because I seen that, on your Instagram, it says not The Rock. You've cosplayed as The Rock. You've cosplayed as Mankind. And then, John Cena being Peacemaker and being a wrestler. What are some of your favorite wrestling moments and stuff like that? Like,
well, I started watching wrestling actually when Hulk Hogan actually won the belt from Iron Sheik. I caught it on a replay or something on Saturday morning right after Saturday morning cartoons or something like that when I was younger. And so that got me connected to wrestling. But I think I grew tired of Hulk Hogan before anybody else did. And I was ready to move on to people like Macho Man and Bret Hart, and it grew from there. But it was when The Rock came, my biggest person that I followed in wrestling for the longest was The Undertaker. As soon as I saw The Undertaker show up, I said, this is going to be the guy that can finally take down this Hulkamania thing. And so I was really looking forward to them fighting, and then the fact that they had to do some cheating or whatever, and The Undertaker won the title on a Sunday, but then they had a Tuesday night thing, and the Hulk Hogan won it back, and all the politics of wrestling. I didn't know anything about that, but I knew that The Undertaker and what he's got here is going to be something that's going to be big, and that's what I gravitated to. And when the Rock came in, that was the next major point for me in wrestling. And it wasn't when he came in as the baby face. I'm like, nobody likes him. This is not going to work. They're trying to push him on us. And it was great to read his book and see how he had told Vince when he came back from his injury, he wanted to come back as a heel. He thinks that he can get them to connect with him better than trying to be that smiling baby face, which Vince always goes to for some reason. And so when The Rock did that and he started throwing out his first insults, everybody was booing him, and I started liking it. I'm like, this is working for me. And I said, this is the way I want to be. And I was watching that, and just so happens the raising of the eyebrow and things of that stuff, I was already doing that as a kid.
yeah.
But then I had found some pictures of me in high school and in college, just sitting around doing that. And come to find out, The Rock and I are about 6 months apart in age. So as a kid, before he was in wrestling, I was doing the same thing that he was doing in wrestling with the eyebrow and stuff. So I was always doing that. And a friend of mine in the military said, dude, you're not The Rock. I said, yeah, I know. I'm not The Rock. And so that name kind of stuck with me as not The Rock. And so that went on to everything that I did. And it's funny the way I watch different wrestlers and I see, well, if they tweak this or tweak that, and next thing you know, they tweak this or tweak that, and all of a sudden they're the big hit. We have friends that absolutely hated the New Day when they came in as the bad guy New Day.
Yeah.
But then as soon as they were chanting New Day sucks, and Xavier Woods looked at the crowd and he started yelling, no, we don't, with his higher pitched voice. I laughed at that. And I'm like, he's going to be kind of like Jimmy Hart. I can see him doing that. And then they bring out the trombone and he goes, when they kick him. I'm like, these guys are great. And everybody was complaining. I'm like, we don't like them. I'm like, you will like them. You will like them soon, because they're going to be the ones making you laugh all the time. And I am enjoying their act. And sure enough, their nasty act turned into things people liked, and they had to turn them babyface because of it, and people just got behind them. And so I just love to see how somebody transitions through that. But The Rock has been the thing that I go to all the time, and it just so happens that a lot of people in my life think that I look like The Rock, or at least at different points in his life, that I look like The Rock. And so I try to keep to that, but there's no way in the world I'm going to get the muscles like he is right now. So, but I'll be Rock pre-movies or something like that.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, yeah, you do look like The Rock when
thank
you
you.
don't have the Pennywise stuff. But The Rock is one of my favorite wrestlers. Like, he was one of the wrestlers who brought me back into wrestling when I was a kid, because, you know, growing up, of course, I watched Hogan and Macho Man and stuff like that, but it was seeing The Rock on TV during the Attitude Era that was just like, yo, like, this guy is awesome. Like, all of the catchphrases and the smack talk, and, you know, it was good entertainment. And story time, I remember I was in the 6th grade and The Rock's just started saying that you know, The Rock's favorite pie is Poo-Tang pie, and I didn't know what Poo-Tang pie was. You know what I'm saying? So I remember I was in the lunch line, and somebody had asked me, they was just like, Banks, what type of pie do you like? And I was just like, I like Poo-Tang pie. And one of the teachers heard me, and he was just like, don't you ever say that again. He gave me the tension, and I was just like, why am I getting in trouble? Like, The Rock says it all the time. Like, that's The Rock's favorite pie. It's Poo-Tang pie. And the teacher, I guess he didn't know who The Rock was, but he knew what Poo-Tang pie meant. And kids, if you're watching this, please don't look up what Poo-Tang pie is. Wait until you're at least a teenager or an adult. But yeah, that was my Rock story. But the next question that I want to ask you is, you know, I seen like your fitness journey from like where you started at to where you are right now. And I wanted to bring that up because I remember seeing on Facebook, you said that you had went to go see, and I'm mad I can't remember the Rock movie. It was the Rock and Kevin Hart movie. And
the Central Intelligence.
Central Intelligence. And you had said in the post, it was just like, my wife wanted The Rock, so I gave her The Rock. And then like, just to see your transformation, man, because I'm the same way with my weight loss journey. I used to be over 200 pounds, and you know, I got down to 246. I lost 200 pounds, man, and it's definitely a journey. And your story, like just seeing your pictures and everything, and seeing where you are right now, and it's definitely an inspiration. So I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to somebody, whether they want to do cosplay or just, you know, life advice in general, to, you know, live a better life and get in better shape?
Well, there was a couple of drives that got me into getting into shape. I was always big into lifting, but I was not doing the right thing when it came to nutrition. I also wasn't lifting right. I ended up with a lot of injuries. So for years in my lifting time, I probably spent a third of the year trying to recover from an injury that I did because I wasn't lifting properly. And so there's a YouTube page, a YouTube guy, Jeff Cavalier, Athlete X. Whether you agree with all of his methods or not, everything he does is based in science. And so he will help you learn how to do things properly. He might not be the guy you're looking for to become the best bodybuilder or the strongest guy in the gym, but he's going to tell you what you need to do to avoid getting injured when you're trying to get on that journey. So that was one of the first things that clicked, but it was because when I did the Maui cosplay, I did that cosplay and I felt really good because I felt like I was looking like Maui at the time. I had all the tattoos and everything. But then when I got back from San Diego Comic-Con, I'm looking at those pictures and I'm like, that's not the image that I have of myself in my head. Yeah. That looks great on film. It looks exactly like what I was shooting for, but that's not the me that I remember. And so between that and then my mother passing away from one of the things was morbid obesity that led to her finally passing away. I realized I need to take this seriously because at that point in time, I was 320 pounds. And my frame, when you do all that BMI stuff, they say I should be like 165 or whatever. I'll never see that. but when you have that much of a discrepancy there, you know that there is room for improvement. Yeah. And so I started getting medical help, trying to figure out how do I do this process, how do I do it safely, and through my medical journey, which that's also on my page, and I won't go into all of that stuff. They got me on the right path, and within a year of starting to see the doctors and working with that, I had dropped 130 pounds.
Nice.
And that was 4 years ago. And of that 4 years, 4 years ago of me dropping all that weight, I've maintained over 100 pounds of that loss. So I haven't put on a lot of excess weight. And hopefully what I have put on has been muscle. Yeah. But a lot of the weight that I lost, unfortunately, was also muscle, because they had did a scan of my body, and they said, even though you're 320, your muscle mass right now is 206 pounds. They're like, if your muscles alone are over the size that we want you to be with the BMI kind of thing. So they're like, we're hoping that you don't lose too much muscle in this process. But in the end, I ended up actually losing about 40 pounds of muscle. So I was wondering why I was weaker, as I was in better shape than I had ever been in my life. I'm like, why am I so weak? And then I realized how much muscle I lost with that fat in that process. But I let cosplay be my goal of, I want to look like this character. You don't have to look like your character. And sometimes if I don't look like the character, I want the mindset of that character. So I want that persona. And that's when I started working on my voice and everything else, because I never knew that I would even be able to pull off a decent looking Pennywise, but I wanted to play that part. And so I started working on the voice and things of that nature. I had did stage acting for community theater for a while, and I did The King and and I went into that interview in that tryout for that part, putting on my best Yul Brynner impersonation. And the funny thing is, they were trying to make it authentic and everything else, so they didn't want me bald like Yul Brynner. They wanted more of Asian culture there, but for whatever reason, even with all the other Asian actors who were actually part of this, they chose me to be the king. And so that was kind of funny. So, but at the same time, for about a month and a half, I was walking around as the king, and that drove my wife crazy. I fell into that character, and I maintained it, and for a lot of the things that I did. And because it was a community, I would go out in the public, and people would see me, and we would go to the movie theater, and it wouldn't be that crowded, and a family of 4 with kids and everything would look back, and they'd say, "Are you the king?" And that would drive my wife crazy. And I would go into character. Yes, well, yes, I am. But I try to just dive into the character, and by diving into the character, basically made me physically want to dive into it as well. I'm like, I'm being a superhero. I want to be super. So I'm going to push myself at the gym and do this. I'm doing this character, and they're eating healthy. I want to try to just get into that feel of being healthy, so that when I'm standing there and I'm walking around these cons, because I had already been to cons as a big guy, and I'm like, this is tiring. Yeah. But I want to stay in that character that entire time. And so, like, when I built that Gladiator Hulk costume, every time I wore that, if I wore that for one full day and I get on the scale the next day, I dropped 10 pounds of water weight. Yeah, and so a day. So every time I did that, so I never wore a Hulk the entire con. I wore it one day out of the con, or a day and a half maybe. But then I'd fall into other costumes. And so that really helped me realize, hey, I want to be on this journey, but I want to be the character that I love. I admire this character for whatever reason, and so I want to be like that character. And that was a driving force to make me feel like I want to get into better shape, because I want to have fun at these cons and not being the person who's tired out sitting in a corner trying to get my boots or my shoes off and resting all the time. I want to pretty well be in character to give everybody else there an experience with that character. So when people will come up and asking you for photos, and some people don't know the proper protocol, so even when I'm going to eat something, they'll pop out of nowhere and say, I know you're about to eat, but do you mind taking a picture? And so I try to put all my needs in that situation, and that costume is secondary, because I walked into this character for a reason, to make those kids enjoy this, or make those teenagers enjoy this, give them that opportunity to see the character that they want. And so it's actually been what's kept me motivated throughout the process. The fear of dying got me started, but the enjoyment that I get out of getting closer to the physique that I want, and being able to do more and more cosplays the way I want, is what keeps me motivated the next time around. And I've got quite a few cosplays coming up that's going to require me to be in better shape. And so I right now, I'm basically building cosplay by building my body right now.
Yeah.
And
I
so
love that.
so no matter what I'm doing, if I'm not doing my work at work, and when I'm at home, whether I'm watching something on TV, whether I'm at the gym, whether I'm actually working with phone, all of those things outside of work is actually me building a cosplay. But if I'm watching a show, I'm watching the show to learn that character, or learn how they're doing something in that show. If I'm no matter if it's wrestling or if it's the movies, but most of my movies are either anime or stuff like the Peacemaker and things of that. There's characters, and there's character driven there that I focus in on. And watching any kind of show, the first thing that goes through my mind is, I think I can make that outfit they're wearing. So my mind is constantly running, like I said, and the stuff is pre-built before I even walk into the store in my head. So
Yeah,
and
man.
so that's been so much fun doing it.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I really love all of that. And I hope that everybody that's watching, you know, if you were inspired by this to get in better shape, I really hope that you take Moody's words to heart, because, you know, I was the same way, man. It's just like wanting to just be here and to be healthier, so that way that you can just enjoy your life and like do fun and cool things at cons without getting tired and whatnot. So one thing I highly recommend everybody that's watching, do cardio. Cardio will help you, and it expands your lungs and all that stuff. So, you know, make sure that you stick to that. So Moody, one final question for you, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite Black character in pop culture?
In pop culture.
Mm-hmm. Comic books, anime, cartoons, because it's Black History Month. I gotta ask the question.
Yeah. One of the ones that there's so many as I started thinking about it, and the first one that popped into my head was Afro Samurai.
Hey.
I just love everything that Samuel L. Jackson does. So as an actual person, Samuel L. Jackson, because of the range that he has, and yet the attitude that he still carries from role to role. But I've been looking at potentially doing an Afro Samurai in the future.
Nice.
And I'm just trying to figure out how would I want to portray that. But I've got friends that I really like working with, and so they would be some of those other characters in there. But the number one that was in there, and also the guy with the panda head and stuff. So it was going to be the three of us doing a cosplay together. So that's one of the ones that kind of sticks out as a pop culture type character. But besides Samuel L. Jackson and the things that he's just done over the years, I always kind of come right back to The Rock, because The Rock has a lot of similarities of a lot of things that I went through in life. Yeah. And the struggles that he did, and that he was able to turn his life around, and him going into these schools not looking exactly like everyone else, whether I was in an inner city Black school growing up, or I was in the suburbs growing up. I never quite looked like the people on one side or the other. Yeah. And so I was always the guy on the outside, no matter what group I was in. And so someone like The Rock, and the fact that and it's probably not just his money, but it's his personality that's got him to that stage, was able to draw others into him as opposed to sitting on the outside. And so I really really like to vibe with The Rock and the things that he's done, but I always fall back on Samuel L. Jackson just for that attitude. So,
And those are two of my favorite people. Samuel L. Jackson, he's my favorite actor of all time. So that was a really nice point. And you get a pinky for that.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
thank you so much, Moody, for joining me on Who's That Cosplayer. And before I let you go, hey, you got to say Deku. Oh, snap.
Hey,
See, this
I
is
saw him there.
awesome.
And at first, I thought it was my camera doing some weird stuff because he's sitting there looking at me the exact same way. And so I just wanted to show you that he's sitting right here.
Hey, that's awesome. Hey, Deku is here with me on every video, man. And yeah, it's awesome that he saw another Deku. It's awesome that I saw another Deku. It's awesome that everybody that's watching saw another Deku. So, Moody, before I let you go, let everybody in social media land know where they can find you at.
You can find me on Instagram at Mootyvision, or you can search on YouTube because sometimes I pop up some videos there. You can look for Not The Rock or Mootyvision on there. You can also look at me on Facebook. Facebook, my cosplay page is Closet Cosplay Closet. Or is it Cosplay Closet Cosplay? Yeah, it's Cosplay Closet Cosplay. But anyway, you can always look up Mootyvision and you'll find me everywhere you go.
Nice. Yeah,
And that's Mootyvision.
Yeah, not Mootie.
Yeah.
Mooty.
Ty. Yeah.
T-Y. So
Yeah,
again,
definitely.
thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, you know where you can find your hero, Benjamin Banks, at KingBenji_Banks. On Twitter and Instagram, you can find me on Facebook at Benjamin Banks. I should be the first person to pop up. If not, then I need to contact Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Keep that pinky up. Stay positive. Happy Black History Month. We'll see you next time on Leveling Up.
Bye, Benji.
Oh, Pennywise is back. It's time to go. Peace.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching another episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe to the channel. Podcast, we got that too. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit that bell for further episodes and notifications. Thanks a lot to our patrons. And if you don't mind, join the Patreon. We'll be having new specials coming up soon.